Before there were paragraphs, before indentation or white space, before even punctuation as we know it, there was this. The Paragraphos, a soft horizontal line tucked beneath the beginning of a line of text. Not to end something, not to shout, but to say, pause, breathe, something changes here. Today, we're uncovering one of the most poetic punctuation marks in history. The Paragraphos was used by Greek playwrights, philosophers, and poets to signal shifts in structure, voice, or tone before paragraphs even existed. It's subtle, sacred, and wildly powerful when used with intention. Hello folks, I'm MT Lynx, author, artist, and indie dev, and if you're enjoying the lore behind the language we use every day, the philosophy behind the punctuation that shapes our communication process, or deep dives into stories, or just even hearing a fairy tale read to you, which I've got those up here if you'll enjoy those, do me a favour, do the algorithmy things. Subscribe and follow along if you enjoy my content, hit like if you learn something from these videos, and if you want to, ring the bell. I post new content just about every day across these different subjects, and doing all of this helps the YouTube gods know that what I'm doing is worthwhile. So, thank you again. Now, let's dive into that line beneath the line. The pause that preceded the paragraph. The word paragraphos means beside writing in Greek. It first appeared in the 4th century BCE, and it looked like this. A short horizontal line, sometimes a curl or slash, and occasionally a mark in the margin, guiding the eye. Its role? To signal a shift in speaker in dramatic dialogues, or to shift in idea in prose and poetry. In a world where script was written without spaces or breaks, the Paragraphos gave readers room to pause, to listen for the turn, and to feel the moment. And you can still find it. Euripides' plays, Aristotle's philosophy, Sappho's lyric fragments, and early liturgical scrolls. It is the earliest known sign of paragraph structure. But also, it's the first punctuation that ever asked the reader not to read faster, but read deeper. The Paragraphos as breadth, beat, and boundary. Let's talk about meaning. The Paragraphos is not a period. It's not an end. It's a hinge. Kind of looks like one, doesn't it? Think of it as the pause in poetry before the next stanza. The moment a second character joins a dialogue. The breath between call and response. The inner exhale before a confession. If the em dash is interruption and the ellipsis is fading thought, then the paragraphos is the sacred pause. In emotional terms, it says, what comes next is still connected, but it carries new weight. That is huge for fiction, and it allows us to mark voice change, time shifts, emotional pivots, line level transformations without spacing out the scene, and poetic structure without extra white space. How to use the Paragraphos in modern fiction. We don't have to live in ancient scrolls to use the Paragraphos. In fact, it can become a signature mark in your writing. You can use it to mark internal monologue with a multi-layered point of view, indicate character shifts in dense lyrical passage. You can separate spells or chants line by line. You can show nested dialogue in letters or dream sequences. So, here are a couple of examples. She remembered the last thing he said, don't wait. Or, I'm sorry, she whispered. The wind didn't reply. You could also use it as a stylized scene break glyph, a separator between visions or memories, a line divider in prophetic writing. Use it instead of asterisks or bullets when you want the transition to feel intimate, not intrusive. Paragraphos in world building and magic systems. In fiction, especially fantasy and mythic storytelling, the paragraphos can become more than formatting. It can be ritual, symbol, design. In your world, this symbol could be the glyph of pause in a sacred language, the divider of souls in afterlife scripts, a breath line in magical incantations. Gotta tell people when to breathe when they're chanting. And a structural requirement in spellcasting. So imagine this, a book of prophecy where each shift in voice is marked with this symbol, a religious tome that uses the paragraphos to distinguish divine speech from narrative history, a poem carved into stone with this symbol between each soul-binding truth. The reader doesn't just see a shift, they feel it, because the symbol asks them to stop. Emotional resonance and thematic symbolism. The paragraphos is restraint. In a world where every punctuation mark tries to do more, the paragraphos quietly does less, and somehow this means more. It doesn't break the sentence, it holds space beside it. Use it when you're writing grief to mark each breath between memory and reality. For dream logic, to signal each echo of a shifting thought. In polyphonic narrative, to separate one voice from another without forcing a hard reset. The paragraphos gives you a way to say, there is more here, so let's take a breath first. Symbolically, this can embody transition, duality, shared structure, or hidden rhythm. It is the syncopation of prose. How to type and format the paragraphos. Always love my technical parts here. The paragraphos isn't on most keyboards. What a shame, I know. But it is encoded. Here's how you can type it. Unicode, U plus 2E 0E. In HTML, ampersand hashtag 11790. Alternatively, you can copy and paste this symbol across formats. Here are some formatting tips. Place it before a new line to indicate a structural shift. You can use it as a decorative scene builder and style it in EB Garamond, Cardo, Gentium Plus and Noto Serif. Center it with M-space padding for breathing room and visual replacements. Now, what do you do if the paragraphos isn't supported in your favourite font? Well, if it were me, I would change fonts. But if you've got one that you just have to use for some required reason, or maybe it's just your go-to die-hard font, I've got you here. First of all, you can use M- with trailing dots, a single-centered line, or a left-facing corner symbol, like this one right here. You can even invent your own stylized paragraphos rune and let it become the narrative breathmark in your story and your writing. The paragraphos versus the paragraph. Okay, this isn't just semantic, folks. The paragraph as we know it, indented, spaced, structured, evolved from the paragraphos. But while the modern paragraph is structural, the paragraphos is emotional. The paragraph says, new thought, breaks format, physically moves the eye. The paragraphos says, transition here, hold position, and keep flow while shifting your tone. In fiction, you can use the paragraphos when you don't want to break the moment. Use it to mark an emotional lurch without a narrative cut. Those tend to be very jarring. And use it inside poetic prose, fairy tales, epistolary fragments, or ritual narrative. It's the softest shift with the strongest shadow. This is the paragraphos, the line that lives beneath the words, the space between speakers, the hinge between one idea and the next. It's quiet, subtle, often unseen, and it is the first punctuation mark that ever asks the reader not to move forward, stay with the weight of what was just said instead. Use it for pause, use it for pivot, and for permission to feel. Next week, we're going to slide into sacred typographic flair with the flairon, a floral ornament that once divided chapters and now hides its meaning in decoration. Until then, I'm MT Lynx, and this was the Paragraphos. Write with silence, write with structure, and write with the space that breathes. I'll see you in the next video. This one, right here. See you there.